Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Into normal things.
You should start.
Okay. Hello, guys. Welcome back. We're back in the studio. We've moved from the bar back to the studio. We had a great talk with Justin. We hope you guys liked that episode. We're really excited for our next Drinking with the Stars. Let us know what you think. DM us if you want to be on it. We would love to have you. Yeah, today we're doing things a little differently today now that we're back in the studio. Christy and I are trying to spice shit up. Usually when we do the show, Christy and I will give each other some warning about what it is we're going to do. We know what the topic is before we go in, but we might not necessarily know anything about it. Most of the time, our surprise is very honest. We don't have the deep conversation about it until we're sitting in front of you guys. But this episode and our next one, and maybe for the foreseeable future, we are not going to tell each other anything. So this is our first time. I have no idea what Christy has prepared for today.
And I know you don't know this story.
Oh, shit.
I'm very excited, but before we can do that, theme song.
Paranormal girls into normal things. A paranormal girls into normal things. Yeah.
So, we're going back into true crime land. We are telling the story of Dirty John. Have you ever heard this one? So it got the name Dirty John from this really cool podcast that did like a whole in-depth expose on this gross guy, John Meehan. And if you want to hear more, because this is the condensed version, go listen to that podcast because it's really good. And they give you all the deets. This was also dramatized for Netflix. What's her name? Connie Britton and Eric Bana play Deborah and John.
Okay, yes. So I was like, that name sounds familiar. I don't know the story, but I did know of that show.
Okay, it's actually a really good show. I mean, I enjoyed it. It's entertaining. I thought the acting was pretty good. And it's pretty close to the story. Cool. It's pretty accurate. It's crazy. Deborah Newell is a 59-year-old woman based in California. She was independently wealthy from her thriving interior design business. It's called Ambrosia Interior Designs. She was married and divorced 4 separate times and has 4 children, 3 girls and 1 boy. But we're primarily going to focus on her 2 daughters, Tara and Jacqueline. I don't know where her other kids are, to be honest with you. So, October 10th, 2014, Deborah meets this guy, John Meehan, on a dating site for over 50 individuals. Nice. People who are over 50. And he shows up for their date and he's looking a little bit disheveled. His clothes are wrinkled. He's wearing shorts. Her daughter Jacqueline is there. She's 24. She remembers seeing that his nails were dirty. She thought he looked homeless was the word she used. But other than that, John is a dream. He's pretty cute. He's super charming, super sweet. Deborah said that he was everything on her checklist that she was looking for. He told her that he was an anesthesiologist. He had served in Iraq. He spent a year with Doctors Without Borders. And she really liked him. They really hit it off. They kissed outside her apartment, and then he kind of let himself in. And she's like, okay, well, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. And she comes out and he's in her bed. And he's like, oh, these pillows are so comfortable. And she's like, you need to leave.
Yeah.
She kicked him out and he like got kind of mad. But he like apologized and they kind of moved forward and they went on more dates. And he was really a dream, but he was constantly wearing medical scrubs. And even one time she invited him to a cancer benefit, like a very formal event. And he showed up in medical scrubs and was like, oh, I just got off work. And she was like, oh, he's like busy. And weird. By their 3rd or 4th date, he was already saying, I love you. And she thought this was kind of weird.
Yeah, that's
weird. But after 2 weeks, she emailed him and said, so you are the real thing. And he replied, best thing that will ever happen to you.
No!
Done. So he's a doctor, right? So he's supposed to have money, but he claims that like the majority of his money is just really going to his children, and he has tax issues from like previous relationships, and like he just struggles to have access to his funds a lot of the time. So he begins spending the night really, really regularly, pretty much every night, at her Irvine penthouse in California. And this was really alarming to her 24-year-old daughter, Jacqueline, who lived with her at the time. I love Jacqueline. She gets a bad vibe from John right away, and she's super vocal about it. So Jacqueline keeps like expensive purses, her Birkin bags and such in this safe in her office. And at one point, John is walking by and he walks in and he goes, "What do you have in that safe, kiddo?" And she says, "None of your business," and closes the door in his face. So her other daughter, Tara, also prominent in this story, they're both suspicious. But Deborah kind of brushes it off because she's used to her daughters finding something wrong with all of her relationships. She's had 4 marriages that have failed, and she had some like abusive relationships. So her daughters were protective, and she just kind of felt like that's what this was.
Yeah.
John tells Deborah that he's having a hard time finding a place to live right now. He's in between places. He has many homes, but like, for one reason or another, he can't stay there. Look, I don't know. But they start looking for a place together. And they buy a place right on the boardwalk in Balboa Island in Newport Beach. The rent was $6,500 a month.
Ow.
She puts down a year in advance. And he refuses to put his name on the lease because of tax issues. This is, by the way, November. And they met
A month.
in October.
She's insane.
I feel bad hating on Deborah because she is a victim. Like, he
Yeah.
was a manipulator.
Oh, for sure. For sure. But the sketch that's already occurred.
And her daughters are screaming at her the entire time.
Yeah, oh my God.
So at this point, they're just fully living together. Deborah is hiding from her kids that she's living with John, and she knew they would be judgmental, but John is just the dream boyfriend. He brings her coffee in the morning, he gets her groceries, he takes her Tesla and her Range Rover in when they need maintenance, he carries her purse for her, stuff like that. She's really feeling like he's a gentleman, and she hasn't really dated a ton of gentlemen before, so she's really excited about this. So now it's Thanksgiving. So a few days before Thanksgiving, Tara and her boyfriend Jimmy come to her mom's new rental by the beach. As far as she knows, her mom is living there alone. But she gets there and John is just immediately very cold to them, which is so weird when you're meeting your mom's new boyfriend for the first time, that he would be rude to you and your boyfriend.
Yeah.
So Deborah's still lying that he's not living there. But Tara goes to the bathroom and sees a bunch of men's stuff and is like, "He lives here."
Yeah.
And Deborah's like, "No, he doesn't." And so Tara's like, "All right, sus." So she goes through their stuff and she finds a nursing license that belongs to John. And at this point, we think he's an anesthesiologist.
Yeah.
He's a doctor. Like, he's Dr. Meehan. And a nursing certificate is not the same thing.
No.
But, you know, maybe he was a nurse first and then chose to get his whatever. This was not necessarily a red flag, but kind of was. So Tara's now at this point like, "You're lying. He lives here. Why would his documents, important documents, be here?"
Yeah.
And Deborah's like, "We're getting them framed." And John bursts in. He starts yelling at Tara, "Why are you going through my stuff? Why are you trying to break up me and your mom?" Tara goes, "Are you going to let him talk to me like this?" And Deborah doesn't really say anything. She runs away crying. She goes to the spare room where her boyfriend was. They were staying there. And John chases her and is like screaming at her in front of her boyfriend. And she's like crying. And they finally just leave. And it was Thanksgiving. It was the day before Thanksgiving. And they left. Actually, John and Deborah kicked them out. Like, they didn't just leave. Like, they were like, "You can't stay here." So the next day, Tara's not there at Thanksgiving. And everyone's like, "That's weird." And John tries to talk to Jacqueline alone. He's like, "I want to have a private conversation with you." She makes a big scene. She's like, "Anything you want to say to me, you can say in front of my family. And also, I think you're a loser and a piece of shit and the devil," and goes off on him and then walks out.
Nice.
I love her daughters. They're crazy. But they were not wrong. So John is really pushing the message that her daughters are out of control and just want to control Deborah's life and don't want her to be in love. And she starts to believe him. She starts to see a therapist, and the therapist is like, "Yeah, I mean, your daughters can't control your life if this is the man you want to be with." be with him. Like, you need to set boundaries with your daughters. So she stopped letting her daughters come over, pretty much. At this point, Deborah's very much embarrassed by John's attire. He wears scrubs, but they're like dirty at the bottom of his
Near his
pants,
shoes.
right?
Yeah.
And doctors don't walk around in dirty scrubs.
No.
Well, they don't wear their scrubs out of the hospital.
Yeah, it's unsanitary.
Exactly. And when he's not wearing that, he's wearing like baggy clothes, like Arizona University or something. So she buys him a whole new wardrobe at Brooks Brothers and does him out. I mean, Deborah is a rich lady. She's a high class lady. She is a stylish lady. She's a designer.
Yeah.
She's a very cool woman and could do so much fucking better. At this point, pretty much every day, John is begging Deborah to marry him. And in December, remember we started in October, now we're in December. He finally convinces her to marry him, and they get married in Vegas. Couple weeks down the line, I guess, Deborah and Tara start to go to counseling together, and they'd reached an agreement that John could come to Christmas, but he had to stay away from the kids. She had a ton of grandchildren and nieces and nephews and stuff like that. According to Tara, Christmas Day comes, John walks in, presents in hand, walks straight up to the kids and just starts playing with them, even though they had agreed in therapy that John was going to keep his distance. And Tara just makes a huge scene, starts screaming, crying, and leaves, ultimately. After that, Tara was not on speaking terms with her mother. And Jacqueline was taking a more aggressive approach. She attached a tracker to Deborah's Tesla to find out what John was doing all day. He would leave in the morning in scrubs, but then where would he go? And she found out that he was going to doctor's offices sometimes, but a lot of the time he was just going and getting gas, going and getting food, or just like pretty much circling the block and coming home. He claimed he was like freelance and he would travel between clinics and ORs doing anesthesiology work as needed, but it was looking like that wasn't completely true. So Jacqueline hired a private detective to look into John. We'll get back to that later. One day, John and Deborah come home and there is a woman standing in their living room, completely wet, like she had just gotten out of the shower, wearing Deborah's clothes. And it scared the shit out of them. And John pushes her head onto the countertop, pulls her arms behind her back, and tells Deborah to get out and call the police. So Deborah does that, but she's like, clearly this woman like needs help. Like, I don't want to press charges, but John is trying to push her to press charges. And Deborah's like, do you know her? And he denies it. And we really don't know what the fuck that was to this day, but
Like,
isn't that weird?
it's very unbelievable that you don't know this woman if she's just standing there and your first inclination is to restrain her,
Slam her head down on the table.
and call the police, and then be like, fucking take her to court.
Ridiculous. So now we're going to talk about Shad. Shad is Deborah's nephew.
Okay.
He works in finance and he's a single dad with 3 kids. Nice guy. But just to take a brief detour, we need to talk about Deborah and Shad's history a little bit. So Deborah was really like a mother to Shad because when Shad was a kid, like 8 or 9, his parents, Cindy and Billy Vickers, were going through a separation and Billy was not happy about it. And he was pretty abusive probably. And he one night murdered her by shooting her in the back of the head.
Oh my god.
Yeah, on their kitchen table. And Cindy and Deborah's mom, Arlene, testified in Billy's defense at his trial.
Oh my god.
Isn't that bizarre?
Yeah, that ain't it.
So Shad really had a very close relationship with Deborah. And he noticed some weird things about John, but John really seemed to like Shad. But the deal breaker for Shad was when they were talking one night, the 3 of them, and Jacqueline came up. And John said, I could take her out from 1,000 yards out. And Debbie just laughed. Like making a joke about
Him hurting her daughter?
yeah.
Oh no.
And Shad was like, what the fuck?
Oh no.
So he tells Jacqueline, and Jacqueline's like, yeah, I know. I have a private detective out on this guy. I don't like him.
Yeah.
But now she's like, oh my God, is he gonna kill me?
Yeah.
She's scared. So one day, the private eye comes back with some information. So the report said that John had a nursing license, not a doctor's license. He had bankruptcy on his record and that he'd been associated with addresses in Arizona, Ohio, Indiana, Tennessee, and across California. And one of the most recent addresses traced back to an RV park. So Shad calls the RV park and finds out basically that John had been living in a trailer up until around October 2014. Yeah. Yeah. So Shad confronts Deborah and says, what if he isn't who he says he is? What if he isn't an anesthesiologist? What if I could prove to you that he was in jail and not Iraq? And she said, even if that's true, I wouldn't care because I love him.
Oh, girl.
So John did not like that. He did not like Shad getting into his business. So he texts Shad, why don't you simply go away? You lost your aunt. You're not invited here. You come near and I call the cops. Worry about your own miserable life and I'll worry about Debbie, who is a lot closer to me than you could ever imagine. You won't win this.
So Shad confronted Deborah, and Deborah was like, I love him. Don't care what his baggage and history is. And then tells John about this conversation.
Yeah. Come to find out, John had been released from jail on a drug charge on October 8th, 2014.
And it was October 10th that they
Went on their first date. He's a man with a plan. Anyway, so Deborah pretends not to care when Shad comes at her with all this information, but she cares, and she starts doing a little snooping. She goes through some of John's documents and finds court documents dating back to 2005 about various cases of stalking, swindling, and essentially terrorizing multiple women who he had met on dating sites while posing as a doctor. He also had multiple restraining orders against him and active requests for restraining orders against him currently. And he also had printed out, I don't even know, like rate your ex-boyfriend websites or like basically websites to warn you about dangerous and abusive men. He had printed out like reviews about himself and was hiding them in his closet. And some quotes from this website were, do not let this man into your life. And another one called him a con artist and a classic psychopath. So John is getting surgery on his back. And at this point, Deborah takes the opportunity to leave and she moves out. But he does not leave her alone. He's messaging her, calling her after months and months and months, begging them to get back together, telling her he needs her, and he admits to her, like, I'm a drug addict. And come to find out, like, he was working in hospitals as a nurse.
Yeah.
But he would go in and when he was supposed to be administering pain medication, he would just pocket it. And was doing hella drugs while they were together. A quote from Deborah, he told me he had lied because he thought he'd lose me, that he feels so lucky that I'm such a forgiving person. I'm the love of his life, that I've made him a better person. And finally, she takes him back.
Yikes.
And now he's like low-key going through withdrawal, and they're going through all of that, which is like being with a recovering drug addict is a task, especially when they're an abuser. His behavior becomes more intense and controlling. They had set up cameras, security cameras, after the incident with the woman. And she figured out that basically he was watching her every move on these cameras. He was keeping her from seeing any of her kids, any of her grandchildren. One day he caught Deborah sneaking away to try to see Jacqueline, and he said that he would throw Jacqueline in the ocean if it ever happened again. So Deborah reaches her breaking point finally in March of 2016 and files to annul the marriage in April. So she finally gets away from him. And so now John is in Nevada, and he starts sending her threatening messages, demanding money, promising her he's gonna ruin her life. So she requests a restraining order, and it's rejected because there's no imminent threat. This was 2016.
I have never heard of someone filing for a restraining order and it getting denied ever in my life.
I've definitely heard of it, but
I feel like in most cases they believe you that you're scared, and it's very easy to say don't go near this person.
Yeah, I don't know what the problem is. I don't know why they didn't do that, but they said there's no imminent threat because John didn't live in the state at the time. He was in Nevada. And he
So then just give it to her anyway. Who cares?
well, he had also never physically harmed her.
So we have to wait for
These are the
someone
reasons. I don't agree, but
We have to wait for someone to get hit.
right.
All that means is you
Yeah,
cannot
restraining
go
order.
near this person. And if they don't want you near them because they are scared of you, they should be allowed to do that.
Yeah, I don't understand what the problem is. I really don't.
That's wackadoodle.
It's crazy that she couldn't get a restraining order. I mean, she really should have gotten one.
Yeah.
So in June of 2016, Deborah's Jaguar disappears from its parking spot in front of her office. And surveillance shows John stealing it. Wait, I love this. It was found later that day, a block away, soaked in gasoline with mild fire damage. John tried to set it on fire and failed. August 20th, 2016, Jacqueline sees John outside her apartment just watching her. And she calls Tara to warn her that John is in town. And that evening, Tara returns home from work, parks her car in the lot outside of her Newport Beach apartment building. And as soon as she gets out of the car, John approaches her from behind and starts attacking her with a knife. And she is fighting him off, screaming. He's trying to push her into the car. And she's trying to get away from him. He puts his hand over her mouth and she bites down as hard as she can. She wrestles him to the ground, finally kicks the knife away from him, stabs him 13 times,
Get it, girl.
including once in the eye.
Get it, girl.
I would do the same thing.
Yeah, make sure he's gone.
And she was very petite. She was like barely 5 foot anything, and he was 6'2" and like muscly, like 6-pack.
That gives me hope.
Yeah, you could do it. It wasn't even a gun or something, it was a knife.
Yeah.
Like, you got away from a guy with a knife.
Yeah.
Like, good for you.
Get it, girl.
John Meehan dies 4 days later at age 57. He was declared brain dead, and his sister made the call to take him off of life support. His body was cremated, and no memorial service was held. That's the basic story of Dirty John.
I feel like I just watched Connie Britton do that whole thing, but I feel like I also do want to watch
She nailed it. She does a really good job.
the series. Immediate thoughts are this was very recent, and I already see flaws in our police system that could have prevented this from getting to this point.
She got married after 2 months.
Yeah. Okay. So that choice, though it was flawed, once she realized that there was a situation she didn't want to be in and was getting out of this marriage because she was scared, I feel like there should have been more resources for her to get this person fully away from her, because like she wasn't getting the marriage annulled just because she wasn't feeling it.
Yeah.
Like she was scared.
Right.
And it got to the point where she was scared for her children too. So I don't understand how you present all of this to police and then to a court and a judge, and they say, sorry, nothing we can do because he didn't hurt you.
I hate that.
I hate that too.
But that happened to us. We had a very creepy neighbor in college, and they told us we couldn't do anything because he didn't touch me. I'm sorry, he did touch me, but he didn't touch me in like an inappropriate place. He touched my shoulder.
He had
so
also-
that means we can't do anything.
He had also trespassed onto our property. He came into our apartment and physically touched our belongings. He shook our chandelier.
Yeah.
He came into our house and was very threatening. And we didn't tell the police immediately, so there was nothing they could do about it, even though he lived right downstairs. They said that they were waiting for something, that it had to be something worse. People give clues that they're gonna do something bad to you.
Yeah.
And we're very perceptive. And people feel that. And if someone is coming to you and saying, I don't feel safe or comfortable around this person, you have to listen.
And on that point, before Deborah was even feeling weird vibes, every single person in her family was saying, this guy is mean
Yes.
and horrible.
Yes, and she was in love and seeing something different than what people on the outside were seeing. And I get that. As soon as it was clicking in for her that something was wrong, like people were turning their backs. The system failed her.
Oh man. Yeah,
Deborah,
I mean,
Deborah,
it's a
Deborah.
monster of a case, and I'm glad that Tara got away and survived, but it is sort of a shame that he died.
Yeah.
Only because I would really like to see the court case on this.
Yeah. I want to see people that attack like that, like, have justice served to them, and I don't think death is justice. That's why
Agreed.
I do not believe in the death penalty. It is not justice.
Right.
It does not fix the situation at all. She 100% should have stabbed him as fucking many times as she
I'm glad she
pleased.
got one in the eye, honestly.
Literally.
At this point in the like TV series, you want to stab him too, and I was
Yeah.
just so happy. I was like,
Yeah.
get him.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So I like.
you know, I hope Deborah's living her best life now.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's learned from this
I hope
experience.
Tara's okay.
She's still trucking. Oh boy.
I'm glad everyone on her side, though might be traumatized, is physically okay.
True. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching or listening now that we are on Spotify and Google. Still waiting on Apple.
What the fuck are you doing?
Let's go. Let's go, Apple. So we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.